Well, I have received threats through the years, but it's also because this is not about me. This is about Jeffrey and what happened to Jeffrey. So I don't need to be seen. My location doesn't need to be known because, again, this is not about me.
All right. So, what do you believe? You've been very outspoken lately. What do you believe actually happened to your brother?
I believe he was killed because I believe that after a day after he died, because when he first died, and I heard on CNN that he was found, dead from a assumed suicide. I was traveling when I heard that, and the government didn't notify me as they claimed they did. I heard it on CNN, and I had no reason to doubt that he committed suicide because he was in prison. I know he was facing a potentially long jail sentence, and I know he wouldn't want to live that way. And he had no dependents, he had no children, parents are gone. He didn't have to worry about me. So I just assumed because you hear that, there's no reason to question it. I wasn't happy about it, but I respected his decision. And because I wasn't up on all the details of his case, I wasn't following it on a daily basis. But after the death, and the very next morning, I had to go back to New York to identify his body because I'm the next of kin. And they did the autopsy. And both forensic pathologists that were there, Dr. Roman from the city, I mean, it was technically her autopsy, and I had Dr. Barden there as because I have the right to have a pathologist there. They came out of the autopsy and they both concurred that this looked more like a homicide than a suicide.
Mm.
And that started raising questions because I thought they'd walk out of the room and say, yeah, unfortunately, your brother committed suicide. And that would be the end of it. Trust
Well,
me,
what
my life was,
specifically, Mark, what specifically did they say to make it think that it was a homicide and not a suicide?
well, one of the major things was the three broken bones in his neck. Now, Dr. Barden has done about 500 autopsies. He's been doing this for over 50 years. So nobody has more experience with prison deaths than Dr. Barden. He was put on a special commission in New York State after the Attica riots in 1970 to investigate prison deaths. So again, no one has more experience than him. And I've spoken to other pathologists, and they say, on a soft hanging, which is supposedly what Jeffrey was supposed to have done, you might get a broken bone, maybe two, but no one's ever seen three broken bones in this kind of hanging. There was another pathologist showed me a report out of the Philippines where they were investigating broken bones in hangings, and they spoke about a certain percentage have one broken bone, and a smaller percentage have two, but there was no mention of three broken bones. So that was one of the major factors here.
Well,
Meaning
did
it's
you have
not
any sign though beforehand? When was the last time you spoke to Jeffrey beforehand? Did you believe that there was any indication that he could kill himself? Was he anxious? Did he worry about this egregious case and all the claims against him?
No, well, the last time I spoke to Jeffrey was the day before he got arrested. He was in Paris. He called me from Paris. It was a Thursday night, just a normal, hello, how you doing? Two brothers speaking. And then the next day he flew back to New York and he got arrested. They picked him up at Teterboro Airport. I never spoke to Jeffrey again after that while he was in jail. So that last conversation, to answer your question, night before he got arrested,
So he didn't even
he
know
was
it was coming at that point.
right. But I know
And so
people
there
who
was
did
no
speak to him. I know people who did speak to him, and nobody thought he was suicidal. Even the people spoke to him the day before.
Well, Mark, who would want to kill him? And why do you believe it's being covered up at this point?
Well, if it wasn't a cover up, then all the information we were trying to get to answer some questions should be readily available. But everything's being hidden. Like when the two pathologists said that this looked more like a homicide than a suicide, on the initial death certificate, which was filled out that day because you needed a death certificate to claim the body, the cause of death stated it was pending further investigation. Now, the pathologists I've spoken to said when a death certificate said pending further investigation, it usually takes weeks before you get a more definitive answer because there's supposed to be some kind of investigation. Pending, it said pending further study was the actual words, pending further study. So they're supposed to investigate to come up, with the cause. But then a few days later, the chief medical examiner, Barbara Sampson, she calls it a suicide. And without giving any explanation for what investigation was done after that first autopsy. And then Bill Barr, the Attorney General, also claims it's a suicide because nobody went in or out of the tier. which I've explained before is a ridiculous statement. And he claims it's a suicide. Now, if the attorney general claims it a suicide, basically, from what I understand, there's no reason to investigate
Well, you're
because
really there's two things though going on here. I mean, we've heard the DOJ and they're saying, and the FBI say it's a suicide, and they provide an autopsy that says this proves this is a suicide, and then you have medical examiners that say it proves that
wait,
it's a
wait, I got to stop you here. There was one autopsy done by Dr. Roman with Dr. Bodden there, and they said it looked more like a homicide. So I don't know what autopsy you're referring to that says it's a suicide because there was only one autopsy.
Well, then what autopsy is the DOJ and the FBI referring to?
Well, that's the question you should be asking them because there was only one autopsy.
Do you have a copy of that? Could you provide that so we can see it?
Yes, I've given that to a number of people. Yes.
I would
Yeah.
love to see that, so we'll get that on. Well, what
Right.
about this though? I
And
mean, you
after that
can't.
wait, after that autopsy was done, we claimed the body. So nobody else had a chance to see the body. And Dr. Sampson, who declared it a suicide, the chief medical examiner, she never saw the body. She wasn't there.
But what about the video? We know that the cell video, the jail video from inside that corridor was released.
Okay.
Does that
Okay.
not prove?
No, because that video doesn't show where Jeff was. They're trying to make it sound like it's showing Jeff's cell door. That was not Jeff's cell door. I have photographs of his actual cell door. They've been released. They're out there. I've also had a photograph of the tier he was on. Now, in that video, in the beginning of the video, they're talking about they're walking Jeffrey into his cell. Number one, you can't tell that that's Jeffrey in that video. I try to blow it up. You can't tell who that person is from the video. And you can't just walk somebody into Jeffrey's cell that way. To get into his cell, which was on the maximum security tier, you have to go up a little flight of stairs. You have to go through a door. It's a locked bar door. And then you go into the tier, and Jeffrey's cell was the first tier to the right. If you look into
excuse me for asking this. How do you know that though if you were never able to visit him there? Were you given a tour after?
Because soon after the death, we got the photographs that was taken by the medical examiner's office when they went to investigate. Before it was declared a suicide, I have photographs of his cell. I have photographs of the tier. I have photographs of the entrance of the tier. This was given to me, not that long after the death. So these are original photographs of what the place really was. That video is bullshit. I I don't know a better term.
No, it's fine. But this is what's more important though at this point, because who do you believe had a motive and the power to have your brother killed inside the jail?
Well, it's an excellent question. As I've said many times in these interviews, I don't like to speculate. I like to stick with facts because if I start speculating, I lose credibility. I also read something else that somebody wrote about me. Number one, they said that I was the older brother. I'm not the older brother. Jeffrey was 18 months older than me. They said that, after the thing, at first I was claiming it was suicide. Then I said he was alive. I never said Jeffrey was alive.
Well, you're with us right now, though. I mean, because I think it's a valid question and not speculation, but in a general sense. I mean, certainly he didn't have he had a lot of enemies because of all the allegations and the cases against him at the time. But what are you thinking that this is something that's even higher than that? Because we certainly have now President Trump trying to say this is no big deal. People are stupid. Republicans who are trying to do this, they were convinced by Democrats. I mean, do you believe that there is some political backing or motivation behind this? I mean, we know Bill Clinton has been in photos with your brother, President Trump. We could go on with more high-powered individuals. Could they have been?
Well, look, the DOJ is obviously covering this stuff up because we're not getting the answers we want. They're releasing videos. They're making ridiculous statements like I said, Kash Patel saying, a suicide when you see one. I had to laugh at that. How many suicides has he seen? As compared to Dr. Bodden, who has seen hundreds, and Dr. Roman, I don't know how many she has seen, but certainly more than Kash Patel. And Kash Patel didn't see the body. He didn't see anything about the suicide. He wasn't in the jail. So how could anybody who wasn't there, who didn't do the autopsy, say, you see a suicide when you know? I mean, it just boggles the mind that he would try to say that and have any credibility.
Do you think this has some sort of connection to the files that many believe have not been released? And maybe that there's a name in there that could be responsible for your brother's death?
Well, like I said, I wasn't involved with his activities. Jeffrey and I hadn't seen each other for 7 years before he died. We were always in communication on phone and email, so I wasn't privy to what who he was with every minute of the day. So I don't know what's in quote these files. They talk about a list. I have no idea what kind of list they're looking for, talking about. I could say one thing, knowing Jeffrey, I don't think he was blackmailing people. He had plenty of money. He didn't need to blackmail people. That wasn't who he was, as far as I know. Uh,
What
you
do you
know,
think about who he is now perceived as, your brother?
well, my brother was stupid. He said so himself to me. That's why I could say that, because he was with girls that were too young. He was guilty of that for sure.
Okay. Well, what do you want to happen now, though, moving forward? I mean, you've been very outspoken about
I would
this.
like I would like to restart an investigation, looking into the investigation that was not done, because a lot of his stuff is gone. I was told they didn't do like fingerprint stuff in his cell. I don't think they did DNA analysis on the ligature that was around his neck to see who might else have touched that. And we don't know where that is. I mean, who has that? Does the DOJ? DOJ usually doesn't destroy evidence. It's usually put away. Here's one. I tried to get the EMT report from the New York Fire Department, because
Mhm.
every time the EMTs go out and make a call, they fill out a PCR. It's a pre-hospital care report or a patient care report. It
Right.
just documents every call they go on. It's just routine. And I was told that I should get that because there's something in that report I should see. The person couldn't tell me because that would violate the HIPAA laws. But he said I should get that. So I've contacted the fire department. And since I wasn't getting anything, I actually went to the fire department headquarters in downtown Brooklyn to
Mhm.
request forms. And lo and behold, it doesn't appear in their computer. There's no record of this
Yeah,
call.
because if the case is closed, you should have access, and there's no HIPAA standing for that. So that doesn't make any sense, and why they
Right.
would
It wasn't, and we know that the fire department guys were there because there's a photograph of them wheeling him out of in a gurney, taking him out of the prison on their way to the hospital where he's intubated. They have a tube down his throat and they're trying to squeeze air into his lungs with the balloon. Now, we know from the autopsy that Jeffrey was dead for at least 2 hours. So, and these are trained professionals. Why did they try to make it look like he was still potentially alive? There was no way he was being revived after
why do
2
you think so?
well, somebody was there, and we can't find out who was running the show, who directed the prison people to move the dead body from the cell to the infirmary. Because when the EMTs got there in short order, Jeffrey's body was already in the infirmary. That goes against all the rules. When you find a dead body, it's not supposed to be moved until the medical examiner shows up to investigate the scene. But he was already in the infirmary, and then and also I was told that there was somebody with a handheld video camera in the
Mhm.
infirmary and all the way to the hospital, documenting this. We can't seem to find that videotape. Why won't they
All right,
release
well,
that?
what about this? Have your strong words, though, Mark, have they prompted any sort of response from the DOJ or any sort of investigator that may want to pursue this and try to get their hands on this specific evidence that you're looking for?
I didn't hear the beginning of that question.
I
Who?
said, have your words, you could be, you've been outspoken and making lots of claims yourself about what had happened. Has that sparked any interest from investigators or the DOJ or any sort of response for a
Well, not from
possible
the
hearing?
DOJ, not from the DOJ, but yeah, there are private investigators, people, the people looking into this, because it doesn't smell right to anybody who looks at all the evidence that we have. People look at little bits of things and say, well, maybe it was suicide because of this or suicide. But if you look at everything together, it doesn't point that way. Again, my life would have been a lot easier if this was clearly a suicide. Yeah, I could
Is
have been.
this you though? I mean, simply said though, in your gut, do you believe that his death was not a suicide, that in fact it was politically motivated to protect the image of other people who may have been exposed?
Yeah, I believe he was taken out to protect somebody from whatever dirt Jeffrey had on them.
And do you think that that person may have been a president or a former president or somebody high up in the government?
I wouldn't dismiss that.
So what do you do now?
Well, encourage more people to investigate. There's more information coming in. There are people who know more about investigating than I do, and they're looking into this, and they tell me they're finding things. I won't report on anything until I know it's a fact, because I only try to stick to facts and not speculating. But there's more stuff coming up, and more and more, it's looking less and less like a suicide.
Well, we appreciate your insight and your thoughts on this as all of this continues to unfold. It's right in the center of the news. People want those files released. Do you think it's important that they are? Do you think that might reveal something, though, about your brother's death? And if we get our hands on whatever may or may not be in those files, that might lead to some answers?
I would hope so. Look, as far as I'm concerned, they should release everything. I have no reason for them not to release anything.
Do you think they're holding things back, or do you think they have released everything like they claim?
Oh, I think they're certainly holding things back. Like, why can't, look, I asked for the video footage from the camera that Bill Barr referred to, the camera that he said he saw that nobody went in or out of the tier, and that convicted the suicide, even though there were 12 other prisoners on that tier that wouldn't have to go in and out if they were going to kill somebody. So that's why that statement was just foolish. Okay. And he's supposed to be the top law enforcement official, and he couldn't think that maybe somebody was on the tier already that could have, killed Jeffrey. I wanted to see the video footage from that camera from 10 o'clock that Friday night before he was found until noon on after he was found, because that would show who was on the tier last when they locked up the tier. It would also show when Michael Thomas, the guard, went into the tier and when he found Jeffrey's body, and then it would have shown when they took Jeffrey's body off of the tier. It would have shown what condition he might have been in, who was handling this. We can't find out who was there. Now, we know the two guards got into trouble for not doing their job. It was Tova Noel and Michael Thomas, but Michael Thomas came on shift in the middle of the night. So when they locked up the tier, it was Tova Noel, and there was an unnamed guard number one and an unnamed guard number two. Questions are, who are they? Why are they unnamed? We know Michael Thomas and Tova Noel's name. So who's unnamed guard number one and unnamed guard number two? Because there's never just one guard there. So we know there's more. And who was there directing the show? Who was the one that said, take him to the infirmary? We can't find.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing some of this evidence, and I would like to see that autopsy as well. But certainly the timeline, and you claim there is a cover-up. We'll see moving forward. And but we appreciate you sharing your thoughts on this, because your brother still, years later, still in the center of the news and stirring up lots of controversy. So appreciate your time, Mark.
Hey, thank you. I'm glad I was able to spread this information. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.